Hey guys, gals, and non-binary pals. I'm your host Hannah, and this is Under the Scrubs. All right, we are back for episode 16. Goodness gracious. Can't believe I've been doing it for that long, so shout out. Thank you, everyone. If you are a returning listener, I love you. If you're new here, welcome. We're just talking all different shit about medical atmosphere, medical findings, medical world, whatever you want. Today, we're going to talk about just kind of the dark side of the fertility industry, if you will. A lot about like egg donation and a little bit about surrogacy. I really feel like this could be like a multiple part series. So we're just talking about that right now. Maybe in the future we'll do more horror stories, or maybe you're like, shut up, Hannah, because I don't want to hear that. I am going through fertility stuff right now. So we'll see. All right. So for my timeout, as maybe some of you know, back from my J. Marion Sims episode, I was going to open a fun little vasectomy clinic once I got really good at it. Maybe call it the Family Finisher or No Mo Flow, Done Daddy. I think I kind of like that one. I think that'll be my favorite one. Anyways, they now are in clinical trials for male birth control. Unfortunately, they really missed out. It's not called Sunblock. It's called Atom. It's kind of dumb. It's like some gel that they inject up in that vas deferens, and it blocks the sperm from coming out and like mixing. It's like 30 minutes less than it's pretty minimally invasive, and it naturally will just degrade over like 2 years. And I think that's pretty cool. It's non-hormonal. So if I can find out a way to volunteer Chris, I'm going to. I don't know, towing the line of consent, where we're at with that. But you know what? I think it's time that men start taking one for the team. For today's episode resources, we have ARC Fertility, Phoenix Sperm Bank, the Fertility Agency, NDD TV World, the Telegraph UK, Bloomberg, and the World Egg and Sperm Bank. So infertility can make or break for some relationships, right? The inability to carry your own child can feel like a detrimental blow to you as a woman, but in today's market, there are so many ways to have a baby. You can visit a sperm bank. You can buy women's eggs. You can plant an embryo that is made from you and your partner into a surrogate. You can do in vitro fertilization or IVF. You can do intrauterine insemination or IUI. You can do surgery to retrieve sperm if you've had a blockage or a previous vasectomy. I mean, you can do surgeries for, tubal ligation reversal. I mean, it's overwhelming and incredibly expensive, as most insurance companies don't cover the cost, or they cover very minimally. I know someone who did 2 rounds of IVF, and it was $50,000 upfront, no payment plans, no IOUs. You had to pay them everything prior to starting. A lot of factors play into that price, though, like location, additional services needed, and different clinics. So it's always best to do, research and consultation. According to ARC Fertility, the average base cost of a single IVF cycle falls somewhere between $14,000 to $20,000, but that doesn't include like medications, genetic testing, cryopreservation, storage fees, etc. One cycle of IVF, the woman will do several medications, and those can cost anywhere from $3,000 to $6,000 per cycle as well. On the donation side of it, men can donate sperm to a bank. And not just any bank, please, for the love of God, do not walk into your credit union or your current bank with a deposit cup. You will be arrested. On average, only about 5% of applicants actually meet the requirements to donate. You have to be male. Between 18 to 35, some places the 40 is the max, but they really try and keep it below that. And there is a rigorous screening process that can take like several weeks. There's a medical questionnaire, and they ask about your family, medical, and sexual history. And by family medical history, we're talking several generations back. Your aunts, uncles, cousins, mom, dad, grandparents, siblings. They look at your allergies, your travel history. Do you have tattoos, radiation exposure? Where have you lived in the world? Military service. I mean, it's all about your life, all up in your business. Men who have or had sex with other men IV drug use, sickle cell anemia, and cystic fibrosis are examples of like automatic denials. You get a full physical, you get a blood, urine, and genetic testing, and you get screening for HIV, hepatitis A and C, and other infectious diseases. Get a nice little genital exam and a color vision test. So if you pass all of that, then you give a semen sample to be professionally analyzed. They look at your count, your motility, and your morphology or the overall health. And that sample is a freebie. You do not get paid for that. The initial sample has to be frozen for 6 months. And if it's hot to go after that, congrats, you can be a regular donor. Sign on the dotted line, and now you can start making regular donations, ideally 6 to 10 samples a month. And you can't have sex 2 to 3 days prior to donation. I really feel like your libido has to be out of this world to do this. But you will earn about $100 per donation, $70 at the time of donation and $30 when it's released. And men are able to earn up to $1,500 a month from this. Now, all of that is information taken from the Phoenix Sperm Bank. Other banks have slightly different variations. The Sperm Bank of California has slightly different requirements, but you can earn $150 per acceptable sample plus bonuses. Those who do weekly or twice a week can earn between $700 to $1,200 plus a month. Whenever you're done donating with them, if you come back 6 months after your final donation, you can do a final blood test and urine test, and they'll give you $500. So that's cool. Apparently, the Fairfax Cryobank Sperm Donor Program has 11 different locations across the U.S., and they do $100 to $120 plus per donation. So if you donate between 1 to 2 times per week, you could earn, on average, about $4,000 in 6 months. And I mean, if we're headed into a recession, might not be a bad little moneymaker. On the other side of that spectrum, women can donate eggs and make a lot more money doing so, but that's because it's way more invasive. The fertility agency back in 2022 said first-time egg donors get between $6,000 to $12,000 plus dollars, repeats get $12,000 plus, and specialty donor gets between $12,000 to $50,000 plus. Not sure why I didn't sell my eggs to pay for school, but I'm guessing I might be a little late to the party. With each donation, the donor gets an increase in her fee. Specialty egg donors are people who have like certain qualities, ethnicities, education, or exceptional talents. Like those with certain Asian ethnicities are in higher demand, so they would get a higher compensation. If you went to an Ivy League school, you'd be in high demand. On top of financial compensation, you get per diems for meals, ground travel and transport, airfare and lodging, legal fees, egg donor insurance, medical and psychological expenses, and you can bring a travel companion who would have all their expenses paid for as well. According to the American Society of Reproductive Medicine, a woman can donate a max of 6 times in their lifetime, so you'd be looking about $70,000 plus dollars, but different regions pay different amounts. So like the San Francisco Bay Area would pay between $15,000 to $20,000. New York would be about $12,000. Chicago, $7,000 to $9,000. Beverly Hills and Atlanta, $8,000. Scottsdale would be about $4,500. So make sure you do your research and you get that bag, sis. You do have to do hormone injections, and you got to take a day off when it comes time for egg retrieval, but you get free anesthesia and a little propofol nap. So what could be wrong then when it comes to the artificial baby making market? Well, imagine you're in need of money. You're struggling financially, and one day you see a job offer on Facebook. A couple posted it. They're looking for a surrogate to help them have children as they are unable to. The salary is between, $12,000 to $18,000. And I mean, you are desperate for money. And to carry someone else's baby for 9 months for that kind of money doesn't seem too bad. The organization they're going through would take care of the passport and the visas that you would need. So you sign up. This is going to be life-changing for you. You get on a plane to Georgia, a country that sits at the intersection of Europe and Asia, and was once part of the former Soviet Republic. Once you step off that plane, you meet your ride, and that's when everything goes to shit. You are herded into 4 large properties with 100 other women. You're given daily hormone injections, and you are now part of a human egg factory. This is actually a story that broke back in February of this year. The founder of the Pavina Foundation for Children and Women, Pavina herself, had said she had first learned about this from another woman who had managed to be released and returned to Thailand after she had paid the Chinese gangsters who were running the compound Rs 1.8 lakh, not sure what that is, but it is equivalent to about $2,100 USD. During a press conference, one of the 3 Thailand women who were released had said that she was pumped full of hormones to stimulate their ovaries, and they were forced to have their eggs removed once a month. When the women would arrive to the airport under the guise of working for the agency, they would be picked up by the gang members and taken to the compound. Passports confiscated, they had no way to contact home, and they were told by the gang members that they are now considered to be in Georgia illegally, and if they were to be found, they would be arrested, so they can't leave. The Pavina Foundation stated that they believe that there had been at least 257 Thai women who fell victim to human traffickers in 2024, with 204 of them being trafficked abroad. The gang that was running this compound had been linked to illegal surrogacy and human trafficking, with ties to underground fertility clinics. Unfortunately, that isn't just a one-off story. In developing countries, egg and sperm donations are often tied to human trafficking and organized crime. This has led to a flood worldwide in IVF clinics and egg banks selling to couples who were unaware of where these eggs are coming from. There was a woman who had been interviewed and admitted to donating 24 times in India, Georgia, Cyprus, and Ukraine. If she had, just bear with me here, if she had 25 eggs per retrieval, roughly 600 eggs, and let's say 20% of them weren't mature, that would leave 480 eggs. Divide that into cohorts of 6, made available to 80 couples. That would result in roughly 40 children, all from one person. In 2019, there were 66 doctors, medical staff, and lawyers who were arrested in Greece for trafficking women, children, babies, and human eggs. They were recruiting from Bulgaria, Georgia, Russia, and other locations. So not only are women being pumped full of hormones, eggs being harvested, they're being given to unsuspecting couples who don't know now what genetic or health issues that their babies might have because they're not sure where these eggs came from or they were lied to about it. So just some stories that I had found about just kind of like this dark side of the fertility world. There's a young girl in Varanasi, India, and she sells her eggs in order to make enough money to buy a smartphone. For 10 days, she'd been sneaking off to an upscale fertility clinic to get hormone injections to trigger her ovaries into mimicking her period. That typically readies a single L for fertilization, but in her case, these hormones are causing her body to produce a whole slew of eggs to be retrieved. By law, egg donors in India must be at least 23 years old. Her school record says that the girl is 13, but she's honestly not sure how old she is. And this isn't particularly unusual at the lower rungs of Indian society where millions of births go unregistered. The young girl was encouraged to sell her eggs by her grandma's neighbor, and the neighbor was actually the one that set her up with a fake ID and helped her come up with a backstory. I don't know how the clinic believed the fake ID. I mean, a 13-year-old girl and a 23-year-old girl look vastly different, but the clinic went through with it. The girl got her cut of the profit, and she was able to achieve her adolescent dream, purchasing a cheap smartphone. Eventually, the girl's mother had heard about it, found out, and confronted her daughter, and ended up contacting the police. The clinic in question was a branch of Nova IVF Fertility, one of India's largest fertility chains, which has been backed by some of America's most powerful financiers. The American private equity giant TPG Inc. controls Asia Healthcare Holdings, which then owns Nova. 3 days after the girl's mom notifies the police and in the investigation, they are disturbed by the girl's clinic file. The insurance documents carried details of a different patient. She had been screened by a lab that was not registered with the state. One form said that she had had a child. Another said that she had had 2. She signed an affidavit in English, but she only spoke Hindi. How did 2 doctors at the time, too, not be able to tell that she's never given birth? The following month, 5 people were arrested. The neighbor who had set her up was being one of them. A press release declared the bust of a gang that lured poor women and girls into selling their eggs. 3 of the suspects had their phones taken and sifted through. They were going through their WhatsApp and scrolling through the messages. And I mean, they're seeing fake ID after fake ID just start popping up. This teenage girl was not an isolated case, and Nova wasn't the only company using donors with fake documents. At least 1,400 fertility clinics are registered, possibly thousands more in operations. India's biggest chain, Indira IVF, conducts about 45,000 cycles a year. That is more than half the number for the entire UK. And while donated eggs are used in a small percentage of embryo transfers worldwide, more than a dozen doctors in India cite that in their clinics, it can actually range between 30 to 50%. Cultural demands fueled the business. Indian women face insane pressure to procreate. Infertility is the height of shame, especially in conservative rural areas. The worst part is that the young girl who was just trying to make some money to buy a smartphone so she could fit in with her friends, that phone turned out to really be a curse. Everyone in Varanasi knew that she had done something illicit to get the money. The girl eventually dropped out of school due to the bullying. Neighbors would confront her mom in the street, blame her for giving her daughter too much freedom. The young girl wants to eventually become a housewife, a mom, and a beautician, but now she worries that no one's going to want to marry her. No one told her that she would, only really be seen as a tool in service to the real patient. She wouldn't be viewed as a patient, and that her eggs would be used to create children. So one side of this walked away with the gift of life. The other side of this walked away with a one-time payment. She realized way too late that she gave away far more than she had received. Years before the young girl sold her eggs, a woman named Yuma Sherpa had moved to Delhi. In late 2013, a woman had approached her with the offer to sell her eggs for 25,000 rupees, which is almost about $300 USD. And that's money that would have taken her months to save up. January of 2014, Yuma arrived at the IVF clinic. She admitted to the doctors that, the hormone injections had caused her a lot of discomfort and she wanted to back out. The clinic told her, though, sorry, it's too late, and that she had to move ahead. And so, less than 10 minutes later, her eggs were harvested. From the recovery room afterwards, she had phoned her husband, who didn't know she was doing this, and she was telling him that he needs to come to her quickly. By the time he got there, Yuma was unresponsive. Staff told him, no, she's just resting. An hour goes by, and the doctor examines her and then decides that, yeah, she actually does need to go to a hospital. Yuma arrived without a pulse, and by midnight, she was declared dead. An autopsy showed that Yuma had died from ovarian hyperstimulation syndrome. Her ovaries had tripled in size with blood and was leaking fluid into her abdomen, causing it to pool around her heart and lungs. And that's actually a really big risk the more times that you donate or just have over a certain amount of eggs. This is a really big issue that can occur. Since the early 2000s, when India began to rise in popularity as a destination for fertility treatments, a pattern was starting to set up. There would be a scandal, calls to regulate, and then nothing. In 2015, the Delhi Medical Council said that the doctor who oversaw Yuma didn't appear to be negligent. They said that it was a rare complication, so nothing had happened. 2 years later, 2017, the council heard another matter. A whistleblower complaint alleged that the doctors at the country's premier public research hospital, the All India Institute of Medical Sciences, New Delhi, had extracted 30 eggs from an IVF patient and, without her consent, given 14 to 2 other fertility patients. They ordered for the doctor to be suspended for a month, and the National Medical Commission overturned the decision and instead let her off with a warning. In December 2021, India passed a law to regulate assisted reproductive technology, and in response, a national board was created to advise the government on policy and create a code of conduct. And on that board sat the doctor who had stolen the 14 eggs. Karen Petz, a 31-year-old woman from Argentina. She initially was retired as an egg donor, but a couple in Mexico had contacted her and said that they were desperate for a donor just like her. So Karen agreed for one last donation to the U.S.-based agency WeFIV, and this would be her 7th donation. Argentina had become an important producer of eggs, both domestic and export, with their large European population, weak currency, and liberal laws around reproductive issues. Fees for donors range from about $2,000 to as high as $75,000. A screen on the wall of the room would show a transvaginal ultrasound of Karen's right ovary, swollen in size by 4 times. There's a dark dozen craters, and each of those craters are a follicle. The needle is guided through the recesses of Karen's body, piercing the vaginal wall to reach into the ovary. And one by one, the follicles are drained of their liquid. They're put into vials, and those vials are ran to the lab. And it's like this for 25 minutes. Needle in, needle out, withdraw, place into the vial to the lab, repeat. Karen donated 43 eggs. She got $35,000, and she left. Alice Kempton was 32 and newly married to Paul when they decided that they wanted to start a family. Alice had been born without ovaries, and so she would need an egg donor. In Australia, donors must be someone that you have an established relationship with, and you must be motivated only by altruism. Alice's cousin had agreed to help them, And so the cousin, who was sitting at 36 years old, was considered to not be the best donor, but they were able to retrieve 20 eggs from her. Over 18 months, Alice went through 7 cycles of IVF. 2 didn't take, but 5 of them did, and they all ended in miscarriage. Her longest pregnancy had only made it to 14 weeks. When they asked the cousin to donate a second time, she had declined, saying she can't go through that again. But Alice and Paul wouldn't give up there. They turned to the U.S., valuing, in Paul's words, valuing the country's transparent capitalism. Alice and Paul find a woman who seems to be a good match, and so they wrote her a letter and asked if they could meet up. Turns out they'd actually both be in Portland, Oregon at the same time, Alice for IVF treatment and the woman for donation. The Kemptons had to pay $17,500 to Growing Generations, the agency finding them a donor. There was an additional $25,000 plus $15,000 for travel for the donor. The clinic themselves charged $40,000. Throw in the Kemptons' own travel expenses, hormones, lodging, food, car. The total debt exceeded $170,000. Their donor was Karen from the previous story. Karen was able to donate 51 eggs. 19 had successfully turned into embryos. While they were waiting for the embryo incubation, the Kemptons were exploring Portland. After 5 days, the Kemptons got the call from the doctor's office that not a single embryo was viable. Paul had compromised sperm, so the plan that the clinic had originally come up with seemed like a reasonable plan. With this big of a failure, the clinic actually offered to do everything again for free, and even Karen offered to donate at no cost to the couple. So 7 months later, Karen did another donation for the Kemptons. 36 eggs were retrieved. Again, 19 embryos were created. 4 of them passed genetic testing. And Alice was actually able to have 2 children. And at the time of her re-interview, she was debating on a third, but Paul wasn't quite convinced. Alice and Karen have kept in touch. They do video calls every so often, send pictures. They're very open with their 2 children about surrogacy, and they've got a book about donor-conceived people, and Alice wants her kids to know Karen. So this story, the woman's name has been changed to protect her identity. Maria one day is summoned to the police station, and when she arrives, there's a psychologist in the room with them. 4 years prior, Maria had gone to a fertility clinic near her home on the island of Crete to have her eggs retrieved. But this wasn't for donation. This was for Maria to finally have her baby. Her first 2 rounds of IVF had failed, and this was her 3rd attempt. Both her and her husband really kind of felt like this was their lucky number. She thought it was a bit odd how the clinic had made her go through rigorous testing, including genetic testing for cystic fibrosis. She's going to attempt a pregnancy no matter what, so why is there a need for all this testing? The consent form had a box to check if you wanted to share any excess embryos, and Maria vividly remembers not checking it. Nothing about eggs were mentioned, though. Initially, she was told the clinic staff was able to harvest about 6 eggs, but the police now tell Maria that the clinic actually harvested twice that number. The other eggs had been used to create embryos for other women. The police were also summoning the other women to deliver the similar news, most of them living in around, I think it's pronounced Hanya. It is a seaside tourist town that had become an unlikely hub for global fertility. Located there was the Mediterranean Fertility Institute, or MFI, and it was a magnet for aspiring parents from nations with restrictive assisted reproduction laws. But the police are trying to figure it out. Did these women ever give permission to surrender some of their eggs? Maria recalls her day to the police and that the day that her eggs were retrieved, and she is told that yes, her 3-year-old is a product of her and her husband, but that her other eggs had been a donation to another woman, and they don't know if the other woman had any babies using that. Maria believes the police know who the other woman is, but because of the Greek privacy laws surrounding egg and sperm donation, they can't give her a name. This is another woman. Her name has been changed as well. Amber, she's a 30-year-old woman in Taiwan. She was looking for a quick way to make money, and she came across egg donation. The buyers, she said, typically come from China because it's illegal to make these kinds of arrangements there. Amber in total has gone through 11 cycles in the U.S., sold about 330 eggs, made about $160,000, and she worked with 4 agents. She's worked with 4 clinics, 2 egg banks, and at least 9 Chinese families. One of her retrievals in Diamond Bar, California, she gave 33 eggs, and it was $16,000. While egg donation in Taiwan is legal, women are only allowed to do so only once if a baby is born as a result, and it can only be paid $3,000. According to Amber, the 6th cycle is very rarely enforced here in the US. There's no way for clinics to track retrievals elsewhere, so if she's ever asked, she just gives the same "I've only done this 4 times" answer. Her highest fee was $25,000, and the most eggs that she's ever had extracted was 52. Her worst fee was $15,000, while her worst donation was 5 eggs. Coming from Taiwan to the U.S. to do egg donation, you have to go through customs and border protection. Amber learned how to deal with the obstacle pretty quickly. The young woman, you'd arrive on travel documents that don't allow you to work or earn any money. And so they would be coached on how to answer likely questions, book the airplane ticket themselves, delete sensitive emails, remove the WeChat app, wear plain clothes, skip makeup, bring a vacation itinerary, maybe even throw in a hotel reservation. When asked to provide a local contact, don't put down the clinic, as someone had previously done that and they were sent back home. Amber had been brought into a separate room twice to be interviewed about her trip to the U.S., but she's, never been denied and sent home. Amber will eventually go on to go from donor to agent, and for every match she makes, the aspiring parents usually pay her somewhere between $2,000 to $5,000. She represents about 30 donors and has sent many of them to China, but now that they are cracking down on business and her main contact in China was arrested, they were actually held for 4 months before they were ended up being released. And so Amber has started kind of shifting towards Cambodia because travel is easier, costs are lower. Surrogacy is prohibited and clinics must get permission to operate, but few other laws govern the industry, so it's more of a gray area. She said she would be willing to go back to China if the timing and money is right. She had previously made a deal with an egg bank back in New York for giving the bank half of her eggs. She was allowed to freeze the rest of them for herself for 10 years without charge. She actually is still doing donations, and she's got 2 more planned, but maybe they'll be her last, but she's kind of open to whatever happens in the future. The egg trade thrives in all sorts of different markets: open market, gray market, black markets. With minimal regulation across borders, who's there to stop it? When the rules or circumstances change in one country, like foreigners are banned from using surrogates in India, or wars shut down fertility tourism in Ukraine, Chinese couples are permitted more than 1 child but forbidden to buy another woman's eggs. The contours of business change as well. Egg donors really have few advocates and few laws to protect their health or prevent their exploitation. The long-term research into egg donation doesn't exist, and that doesn't really seem to be an accident. You can keep people uneducated and in the dark, and you can pretty much do anything. You can make millions off of women who are only making thousands. If they did the research, they might learn that there are long-term complications, and then that in return would decrease the business and the amount of money to be earned. Surrogacy doesn't have a worldwide regulation, which can drive women in poverty to resort to these unsafe and often unconsented arrangements. In the UK, commercial surrogacy is banned, but the international imports are not. There are between 400 to 500 new surrogate-produced babies registered each year, while globally the business is more than doubling in value every 2 years. Just even from 2011 to 2022, the UK surrogate market was up 283%. You can also enter into a legal agreement with a surrogate. You can pay her reasonable expenses. And if you are considered the owner of the womb, it is legal to grow a child either made with your eggs or someone else's and give it away once it's born. But it is illegal to advertise that you are looking for a surrogate or solicit yourself as wanting to become a surrogate. It's also illegal to arrange or negotiate a surrogacy agreement as a commercial enterprise. So if you have a baby via surrogacy in the UK, you have to apply to the court for a transfer of legal parenthood, and in most cases, that will be the first time that the state even becomes aware of the surrogacy arrangement. The application for such a transfer can only be made with the surrogate's consent, but the decision eventually hinges on what the court considers to be in the best interests of the child, not the surrogate mother. So that whole ordeal involves the surrogate, the eventual parents, the family court, and a court-appointed social worker. There is awareness that there needs to be more regulation in the UK, but the agencies who run these surrogacy programs are pushing for legislative reforms to favor the would-be parents rather than the surrogate mom. And this is where some of the UK and other parts of the world divide. They want surrogacy banned. The belief is that if you deliberately bring a baby into this world just to separate it from its birth mother, that's ethically wrong. Surrogates are encouraged to view themselves as bystanders or just the oven for the baby, but that type of disassociation rarely works. There are women out there who have served as a surrogate and they deeply regretted it, whether it be the hormones that they had to take so they can try to get pregnant for the couple, often leaving them feeling like a broodmare. Another says that the surrogacy market is this toxic positivity. It's the most selfless thing a woman can do. It's beautiful, but it left them feeling like they'd been manipulated, used, and devastated. In March of 2023, experts from 75 countries signed the Casablanca Declaration, which calls for a global ban on all forms of surrogacy. April of 2024, an international conference was held in Rome with an aim to provide all states with a legal instrument banning the practice of surrogate motherhood. Bernard Garcia Lorraine, the executive director of the Casablanca Declaration for the Universal Abolition of Surrogacy, it's a mouthful, stated, "The regulations of each country are not enough to stop human trafficking globally. We need an international treaty to prohibit surrogacy because this is a global market that moves a lot of money and knows no border." I had zero idea that there was such controversy and a dark side to this fertility world. I knew that it was expensive, and there's a really, 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 really small part of me that always kind of felt like they were playing on women's insecurities around like not being able to have kids. Personally, I think I sit on the fence often about kids. I've been told that that's good. It speaks about emotional maturity because you can recognize that it's not just about you and you put the focus on bringing another human life into this world. But I never really thought about the slippery slope of it all, where we can start out with women donating eggs, for altruism. They want other women to have babies. It's this beautiful thing. And then all of a sudden, there's a dark side of the market that starts developing. They start using human trafficking to produce eggs to be sold, thereby bypassing best practice standards for safety of the donor and not having a centralized way to track them. 6 is the max number, as it's to ensure the safety and well-being of the donor, as going through like multiple donations can increase the potential of complications like that ovarian hyperstimulation thing. I kind of understand the issue of surrogacy. It was never really something I ever contemplated or thought about. The ability to grow and carry a child, and you're trying to prevent yourself from getting attached to then go through labor and the pain of that to deliver a child for someone else. I can't imagine what that does to your psyche. And if that is, something that you've done and it's not an issue, then what do you have mentally that others lack? Is it considered a disconnection, or is it considered a strong willpower? I think it's like any good thing we have in this world, right? There are people out there who will turn it to a dark place and push past boundaries that are in place to protect individuals. So I'd like to know, what do you guys think? Are you against surrogacy, egg donation? Do you think there needs to be a better way of tracking all of this? Maybe a worldwide policy to lay ground rules that protect both donor and recipient. I want to hear your thoughts. You can pop over to Instagram to the episode clip. I kind of effed up the last 2 weeks by not posting them, but in my defense, your girl's struggling with last minute wedding shit. It's fine. My GI system hates me and I'm getting ulcers. For next week's episode, I'm not confident on what I'm going to cover yet. I'm thinking somewhere in the realm of plastic surgery, procedures, issues in the field, but I don't know yet. So next week's going to have to be a surprise. My mom will be in town, so maybe I can get her on here and ask her embarrassing questions, but we'll see. Until then, I will see you guys next Tuesday. Okay, love you. Bye.